Hey guys, welcome to the Game Dev Discussion Podcast. This is the final week of the Remedy Spotlight, and for episode 39 we're going to finish off with it's the first actually. We've got a programmer on, we've got Adam Munson, a tools programmer at Remedy. How we doing, bro?
Yeah, not too bad. Haven't been on Skype for a while, so this is interesting.
Dude, I'll be honest, I rarely boot up Skype. I either do the conversations via I do whatever suits anyone. I'm like Discord, Skype, Google Hangouts sometimes.
There's also
so I say this for the past 2 weeks. We had a concept artist on last week and we had a producer on the week before. Anyone who's listening who are programmers, I apologise. I'm probably going to come off very ignorant. That's the disclaimer out there from day one, because when it comes to all the programming stuff, I am completely ignorant. I'm a bit of a moron with it. So if I feel like it feels like I'm asking simple questions, I do apologise. I just want to kick off. Could you just explain, so just from like a real high level, just so we understand, tools programmer, what does that mean?
I'm going to start immediately with making it confusing for everyone. From my experience, we're just there to help other people do what they do to make games. So in any way we can help them. But what I find, I've only worked at 3 companies so far, but 2 of them have been a tools programmer. Before that I was a QA member.
Okay.
But it really depends a lot on how old the studio is, what their history is, with like if they've got their own engine or not, or if it's like a newer startup company that's maybe using like Unity or Unreal and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of it depends on what the company is like. So I work at Remedy now, and they've obviously been around since Death Rally and then stuff like the late 90s.
Yeah. So
they've got a lot of some of their tools used is a little bit older, but not too much. Like we're using like the World Editor, which the designers and most of the content team use. That was made for Alan Wake, I think. So that was made in the end of the 2000s. So it's not that old. It's 12 years, whatever now. But
that's crept up.
Yeah, it's quite old, but that's a main tool that most people use in most different disciplines. Like audio guys have to use it, the designers, the artists, all that sort of people use that tool. So that's one of the things we look after at Remedy. Okay. And the other thing is we've got newer tools that were made in WPF, which is basically our asset browser and stuff like that. So you can search for the assets and then edit physics definitions and things like that, and materials and whatnot in a separate tool away from the World Editor one.
Nice. So you as a tools programmer, you're primarily working with the engine. You don't create tools for external software packages or anything like that?
Well, it depends actually, because when I first started out as a tools programmer, we were a lot more involved in doing plugins and scripts for 3ds Max, right. Motion Builder and stuff like that. But then in the last, I'd say since I started, it seems the tech art teams have become bigger and more popular. And then obviously it's quite handy having people that specialize in tech art, because they know a lot of the art side of things. When I started, I had really no idea what some of the stuff I was making actually was. I was told make a helper for this in Max, and I'd be like, okay, I still don't really know exactly what I was doing, but I was like, all right, this is cool. But in the last 10 years, whatever, it's been more prevalent of tech art taking over that kind of side of things, like Motion Builder and Maya and plugins and scripts and things like that to help people. So we do actually do other stuff standalone now for in WPF, but it could be anything really. It depends on what's needed really, because it could be simple little tools that just do one thing, or it could be my last job where that was a lot more involved in the pipeline, which is between exporting from 3ds Max and then getting that data into a format that the game engine could load and then into the game. So another answer where it's it just depends where you work really for tools. It's a bit of a weird subject area, tools programming, but
this is the point. This is because I understand what the tools team was doing in last studio. Basically they had very little involvement with the art team. They didn't really speak to us. They were just so focused on integration and delivery that they didn't really. The art team didn't have really that resource available. So do you spend much time so who comes to you with a problem? Are they is it a producer, is it an artist? Is an artist hey, I'm using the engine, and they'll just say, this thing is kind of annoying, can we do something about that? And you add it to your long list of to-dos and you get to it when you can. How does that work?
We didn't when I moved to Remedy, we have had Slack since pretty much the start, since I've got here. So there's loads of different channels there, obviously, and there's like we've got like a tools help desk channel, which most of the company's in, as well as like a help desk channel for like the IT teams to look at as well, and just all general stuff. So basically, if anything really bad happens, then people can ask questions in the tools help desk channel, and basically we're all on that channel, like all the whole tools team. So basically, if we notice a problem that someone's got, then we can try and immediately help them, or at least get them to put a bug in, and then give us some more information about what they were doing. And then depending on where it is that's causing them like grief, if it's like obviously if it's something that's happening more than once, then we'll try and look at it a bit quickly. But otherwise, it's a case of just trying to prioritize stuff later on when we do the sprint planning for. If a lot of different people are having the same problem, then we definitely try and look at it quicker. No. But then if it's like one person that's maybe had like a one-off crash, obviously that's just like goes to the bottom of the pile, or whatever. But usually Slack is our most the quickest way for us to like try and react to something if people have a problem. But then some people do come and see us, but we are kind of in a bit of a tools cave, hidden away.
As every tools team seems to be, they always seem to be offered a room or like a corner on their own, hidden away.
It's quite an interesting subject though, because like one of the biggest issues or like problems I have to come over in the tools team is if we don't interact with the users that much directly, then a lot of the time you don't actually hear what's actually causing them a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Until you're drinking in a pub and then you hear about stuff, but
it's it's funny. It's such a universal problem that and this is someone I know I push on my artists at this studio and my previous studio. Like, I suppose it's dealing with programmers in general. Both the direct programmers working on the game and the tools teams.
Yeah.
Was like just go talk. I hate communicating via Slack and stuff like this because it's just like stuff gets lost in translation. And that's really frustrating. Like I could ask something and I can come off rude, or like the main emphasis on what I need help with gets missed. So I'm always like, go talk to them. Get out your seat, go talk to the person. They're on the other side of the office. Go talk to them. Because you just solve problems. I feel like you solve problems so much quicker, or at least get to the bottom of problems so much quicker when you do that.
Yeah, because if you do like you said, like lost in translation, or like if you see a text message from someone, then they say, "I'll do this," or "We won't fix that," or whatever, then it can be maybe like appear that it's being rude. But then, obviously, if you go and speak to them in person, then you can kind of both chat about what's actually happening. Because it's like with some problems, some like maybe a few people on a certain team might like have an issue which is actually bothering them every day, but either they don't want to like walk through and think that they're bothering us, and they would rather just struggle in silence or whatever. And then some people don't like put a bug in, and we never even know about like problems. But then obviously we're just there entirely to help people. So it's like you need to try and make everyone realize that them asking you for help or advice or whatever, or showing us an issue is like way more valuable than we can try and fix it quicker.
I'm curious. Obviously you've got a proprietary engine. And I know from working with one previously, when you have artists join, and this is more of an art problem than anything, but we went in our own time, spend most of our time in either Unreal Engine or Unity. Mm-hmm. And obviously Unreal has a ton of support and funding behind it, so there's lots of fancy tools and interesting things you can do. How often do you get people like, hey, can you do this thing that Unreal does? Or can you do this? Because they know that Unreal does it, and they're like, oh, well, that's just something I want because Unreal does it, so we should do it. And obviously, like, it's not that simple. How often do you like come into that?
It's quite often, because people obviously have ideas come from all different directions, and then, as you said, like people that haven't maybe like worked in a place with their own engine or tools before, if they come in and they've got loads of experience from those like Unreal and Unity, then they might have something that's really handy that's already exists, and then at least they can tell us like, yeah, this thing's really good. I think it would just speed up my job or this team's job by if we had something similar for us. And then it's like fine, because then there's always like an example we can go and study and then like see how it works and try and add it in. It's quite common. It's not like totally uncommon.
Oh really? Okay, that's surprising.
It's usually people that come in that are like, if they're obviously they have to use the tools that are existing at the place you've just started, and then they'll be like, oh, I wish I had this or this. Sometimes, I mean, maybe not so much, but sometimes you do hear like, oh yeah, this is quite good. Like some other things don't have this, but yeah, more often than not, obviously you hear about the things people wish they had. So it's like, fair enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I can sort of sympathise in some ways, because like you see every like GDC or SIGGRAPH, like Unreal come out with the next crazy thing, and then everyone is like, well, why can't we do that? And I'm like, yeah, if only it's that simple.
Yeah, because it's 50. Sorry, there's like 50 of us, I think, in the whole Northlight team. But then in the tools team itself, there's maybe like 9 of us, 10 of us, I think.
Oh damn, that's still a pretty big team though for a tools team.
Yeah, it's grown quite a lot in the last, like since I started. There's been like maybe 5 of us started, I think, in the last year and a half. So they're trying to like hire there more, and it's the same as the last place I worked at. There's like trying to increase how much tools programmers there are, because it's in the long run it's worthwhile. But at the start it might seem a bit like a crazy idea, but if there's stuff to be doing, then and if it helps the 150 other people in the company, then in a way it's kind of worth it. It's good.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned you also work with like sound people as well, the way they interact with the engine. Like what sort of, how do you help the people who work with sound? Like just out ignorance, like what sort of
some examples, it wouldn't be the actual sound designers themselves, because obviously they use like other third-party tools and stuff like that, but they use like the world editor to place like sound triggers and stuff like that.
Right, okay, and it's just like how
same
can
as
you
like
do that easier?
Placing props and stuff, but the sound guys like might be placing stuff in there as well.
Right, okay. So just to backtrack a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And again, I'm coming from the point of view of an artist, so you have to excuse me a little bit. When I'm looking into the industry, I have a ton of like examples of what I want to do and where I want to be. It's because with art, it's very, it's in your face, it's visual.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I'm a materials artist, so I look to the likes of Daniel Tiger and Josh Lynch, and I'm like, okay, these are the guys I aspire to. Or I'm also doing environment art, so I look at the great environment art going on, and I've got like very tangible examples, or I don't want to say role models because that's not the right word, but like you get what I mean.
Yeah,
I have something to aim for.
Yeah.
What do programmers do that? And if they do, like how? Because it's so behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think for tools it's even more. Well, there's still always the like Unreal and Unity and all that kind of stuff you can look at to look for editors. But I think for other programmers in other disciplines, like maybe AI or like graphics programmers and stuff, or engine programmers that do stuff for like games consoles, some of the stuff they do is like crazy. I don't understand like half the stuff they do. It's just when I was at university, it was the one where we did like maths courses and stuff, and then we tried to write our own shaders and stuff, and it was just absolutely bonkers with my mind. I was like, I don't know what. That was when I realised I was like, this isn't what I want to do. I want to do something else with programming. But like a lot of people do look at like the early programmers, that did games basically by themselves, and then aspire to sort of try and do something similar. But I suppose these days it's quite hard if you want to join like a big company, because basically there's so many people doing stuff that you can't really have a massive impact in one area unless you're doing something that's brand new. Like, I don't know, for programming it'd be like the ray tracing stuff we did for Control, but then obviously if you're an artist that worked on Control and all that, then it's like they've got way more stuff you can like look at and show people like, oh, I made that, I made this, or I designed this level, or I did that. But for tools in particular, it is one of those ones where you can't really show people like what I did, and like your users are the ones that you work with every day, and then people actually buy the game and play it and never see anything you've done, and you try and explain to people. Like, I remember trying to tell my parents in 2012, I think it was, or 2013, like when GTA 5 came out, and I was like, my mom was just like, what is it you do? Like, I know you do programming, but what is it? And I was like, well, I just literally had one example from something I'd done like the week before, and it was like, oh, well, I made this like helper in 3ds Max, just to help measure out where the rungs would have to go in, like would have to go from the artist when they used it, so that it would fit in with like the animation pipeline, so that the hand would match up where the rungs were. And even to this day, that's the only thing my parents remember about my job in that 1 week that I told them. And now they keep asking how many ladders have I made or something. It's like,
oh man. but just like, so you guys don't really you don't attach the techniques and stuff like that. So you mentioned ray tracing. You don't really attach that to a person, a particular programmer. You just associate that technology as something like, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not usually one person that comes out that like can do something crazy special, I don't think.
Is that a problem? Like, I don't know. I'm thinking, again, I'm coming from the point of view of an artist. I'm like, how do you showcase yourself? How do you like also know where the sort of benchmark is? Because there's a very clear linear like hierarchy within art. It's like, can you do these skills? Yes, yes, yes. Are you good at them skills? Yes, yes, yes. Are you able to do lots of them skills or lead people? Yes, yes, yes. And there's your hierarchy. like it doesn't seem to be anything tangible for programmers to look at to be like, right, I'm a junior, I want to be as good as that guy, like, because like you said, it's just not that tangible. So is that a problem? Like, how do you guys like tackle that?
I don't. Yeah, I think it's like, it is pretty different though. I think, like you're saying, compared to art. But for programming, at least, it's everyone's the same when they're a junior. Like, people do the same mistakes, or they spend too long doing one thing or thinking about things too much. When half the time it's just better to try and get the first version of something out, just to at least get it into the hands of users.
Mm-hmm.
But like, for when it comes to like trying to get promoted and stuff, I think it is just like, some of it's down to years, but then also it's down to like how skillful people are and how much external learning they might do, or how good they are at like helping others, like reviewing change lists and stuff, you know, when they've got other changes to make, and then like trying to give advice to younger people, well, people with like lower seniority.
Right, so it's more like almost like a word of mouth thing, just because obviously with an artist you could show a portfolio, and if there's like a killer piece of art in there, it's like, oh, okay, I can grade that person. Whereas a programming then it's more like, okay, these people say I'm really good to work with, and they, you know, validate my ability through experience. Is that fair to say?
I think so, but like also when you're applying for a job as a programmer, it's probably easier for people that do work on the actual games itself, so they can say, oh, I helped make this effect or this shader or this from this game, and then you can like give a YouTube video or something. But I think if you're doing other programming stuff like tools, then especially if it's like internal like engine and tools, you can't show that to anyone really. Because it's like inside. So basically, I think even if you were going for like a senior job or like a lead job, there's probably still going to be like a programming test at every, like most games companies. So even though you haven't really got anything you can say in a portfolio for like the tools jobs in particular, you can still say like you can say roughly what your experience was like. I made like, you know, help like plugins and stuff for like 3ds Max and Maya, or I made like WPF C# UI tools, which is like a broad skill set you can use in like lots of, like, to make loads of different tools, and it's all the same kind of technology background. So
okay,
it's programming test is probably the key really that gets people to, they'll look at your like LinkedIn or whatever, and then they'll see that, but then you make sure basically with the programming test that they want to like invite you along, or they'll know if some are like really good and they can judge off that, like if what sort of level they would offer you before you even go to the interview.
Just for those who don't know, what does a programming test look like?
It could be anything really. Like the one for Remedy was like just building a small tool from scratch, but it was literally just something like it was like doing something to edit textures, like basically pretending that you had this tool that would just like do things with certain textures of different formats, and basically just like it's something quite simple and small, but it's quite good because it gives you like a broad range of stuff to do from like your skills to see how you would do certain things. Yeah, because it's a kind of like art really as well, as I suppose, like where there's one end result which is like I want it to do this or look like this, but in the background inside it's like it could be anyone could do stuff in so many different ways that it gives people a lot of stuff to talk about in their tests and stuff. So
what about like what does a programmer portfolio like look like? Because I mean, do you guys sorry, I don't mean to put you in a group like that. But no, that's all good. we do art in our own time as artists. Yep. Like that's just something we do. What do you have as a portfolio as a programmer? What do you showcase to show this is my ability as a programmer? Is it literally just tools, examples, and games and little things you've made and engines?
Yes, like some people do like a lot of programming in their own time in either making a game from scratch themselves, or they do like a lot of like group open source like games and stuff like that. Some people do, I suppose, can make tools in their own time if they want to, like to showcase to people. But like I think that my LinkedIn is probably not a good example, but it's just like it's legit just like where I worked, how long I worked, and a little bit of what I did at the place, and then I basically just put the game credits I was on, and that was it. It's like that was hopefully enough to get at least an interview, and then you can go into way more detail when you get there, because usually when you go to an interview, people you sign an NDA obviously for the place you're going to, but then it's just you can kind of open up a bit about what you did roughly about where your current place was, or like past places or whatever, and then give a rough idea of how much like experience you have of certain like code bases and things like that and what you've used. But a lot of people are quite active though in programming all the time, even when they get like home from work, and then they're just like bashing out something else.
I'm just curious, what do you think about this? Because I've got one of my good friends at my current studio, Joe. He's we talk about this quite a lot, and he's what I'd call he is a good programmer. Basically, he joined as a we call him a retail developer, and he's learned JavaScript. Like he got to our studio, not really doing much JavaScript, and like he learned JavaScript like that, and now he's like the team lead for the programming team for online. And that's because I put it down to he is a good programmer. He just understands problem solving. He understands, just the way to think to be, to do that stuff, as opposed to being like attached to a language. Have you experienced much of that type of stuff? Because it's quite actually there's a really weird parallel between that and artists. Because like the good artists are the ones who like they can open up 3ds Max and they're really good in 3ds Max.
Yeah.
But that's it. And then you speak to people like, for example, Matthew O or Chris Radsby, and they're like, they can open up Max, Maya, Blender, Modo, and they're like really good in all of them because they're like, they're good modelers, they're good artists. Is there what's your thoughts on that? Like, do you think there is such a thing as like good programmers who are just genuinely good thinkers and that type of stuff, or versus like good JavaScript developers, good C++ developers, good C# developers? Like, do you see anything there?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same. Well, really, it's like a bit like learning a language, really, because like a spoken language. Because then, once you know how I know how to speak English, sort of, as you probably guessed, right?
No comment.
Like once you have learned how like object-oriented languages work, like C++ or like C# whatever, then you can kind of move between them quite easily because you just need to figure out how do you say something in that language. And then you do it, like in your head, like everything's kind of the same, like for loops and all that kind of thing is like the rough idea in your head. You know how they work, and you just need to know how you actually say that to the computer, like in that language. Like how do I do this in this language? And then there's like certain slight differences, but it's just like syntax rather than.
You said something then. I'm just curious. You said object-based language.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, it's like there's procedural languages and then like interpreted languages and all kind of like stuff and Prolog and things like that, which there's operate in different ways, which I did a little bit at university, but the main ones that everyone uses is like C# and C++ usually, and Java and stuff like that.
Okay, I've got an interesting question, and now I'm curious. I'm really curious to your response to this because I saw it on Twitter from a programmer, and he said you always see artists, and we're going to talk purely within the game sphere.
Yeah.
You see artists wanting to learn bits of programming, and for example, I know a few myself. Like Ben Wilson is an incredible artist, and I know he's picking. He is looking into programming stuff. So the programmer tweeted, "Why is it that you see a lot of artists get interested in developing very serious professional skills in programming, but you see very little in the reverse? You don't see many well, at least I haven't seen many programmers want to get into art." And I saw that tweet and I was like, okay, that's actually a really interesting question. Like, why is that? Why do we do that? So I was curious, what are your thoughts on that as an opinion?
That is interesting. I've never really thought about it going the other way. Like, I remember
it's weird, isn't it? It is odd.
Yeah. I remember when I was like, 7 or 8 years old, and I did this painting at school. It was like a swordfish, and I'm sure it was on like A3 paper or something. I had a massive mouth, and I won like a second prize and like something in Scotland, and I got a book, and I was like, yes. And then about a year later, we started using like the BBC Acorn or whatever it was at school, and then I just kind of lost any like pursuing any of the art side. But yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think of anyone I know that's gone like the opposite way, because I know people that used to be art people, and then they decided they were like technical as well, so they went, oh, I'll become a tech artist, and then they kept on going, and they basically went full into like tools programming.
Yeah.
So they went that way, but I don't know anyone that's tried to go the opposite way. I don't know if it's just.
So go on.
Oh, I was like, I don't know if it's just because. I don't know. I mean, someone could surely just do like art in their own time and learn the skills they need, and then just try and apply somewhere afterwards. But
I mean, I put it down to utility. So when I had this conversation with another programmer from work, we basically got to. I was like, maybe it's down to utility, like the fact that a lot of our tools as 3D artists are very technical and they have like programming basis. Mm-hmm. So that's why, because of utility. But then programmers make their own games. Like, it's not uncommon for programmers to make their own Unity games and all that sort of stuff. So for me, I'm like, what is the utility there then to become like to learn the artistic trade? Because then you could do more with your own game. I'm like, it's very odd. I've really thought about this. I'm like, I don't understand why there's that like distinction, why it goes that way.
That's a good point.
I see people shift within the art community. You know, I've seen concept artists become 3D artists and vice versa and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, out of curiosity, like, do you look at like what when you're observing like your colleagues, the game art they make? You speak to programmers obviously more than me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys ever go like, I wonder if that's worth, you know? Do you ever think about getting into it, or like, does it ever cross your imagination, or are you just like, nah, 100% no?
I don't know if it's because, I'm obviously speaking from my own personal experience, but it's like when I see what artists that can do, and then whether it be concept art or like in-game art and stuff like that, and I look at it, I just think in my head, nah, I couldn't do anything anywhere near as good as that. So I just leave it to artists really. But I haven't really tried, to be honest. So like, I mean, maybe people should go out and try and see what happens, because you never know if you don't try it, right?
Right, is this one that come to mind? Is a programmer that tweeted it, and I was like, shit, you're right. I really I can't think of anyone. I genuinely don't know anyone who has, you know, gone the other way. But
I don't know if people do if they ever burn out, then maybe they go the other way. But then people usually just leave the industry entirely, don't they? So
well, nice segue, very good. I like that, because I wanted to. There's one thing which I do think and I admire about programmers, which they do. I feel like they do have over art. It's not vice competition or anything, but like, you know, I feel like programmers, I suppose you could say yourself, you could like uproot and completely move industry, right? Like you could move into, you know, accounting systems, you know, for banks. You could go into like back-end AIs for like, you know, whatever. You know, the possibilities are endless. Am I right in saying that? Do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's more so for tools as well, because we do like this WPF stuff in C#, and that's like a lot of banks and I don't know, like breweries even, because I had a guy I used to work with. He originally was doing like brewery stuff for what's that? I totally forgot the name of it. What's the beer in like Holland, the Netherlands?
Oh,
Heineken. I think it was Heineken. Okay. Yeah, he was like doing like tools for Heineken.
Right.
And then he just wanted to move to the UK, and he was like, all right, I'll just see what I can do with my C# like WPF skills. And then it was games come up, and he was like, what? So basically he didn't even realize he could get a job in games with what his programming skills were. But yeah, we could like, it's probably quite easy for tools team people to like uproot and then change industry entirely to like working for a bank or something like that. But it would definitely be more boring. you get paid more, but it would be, at least now, even though we're like every day we're making tools that nobody really ever sees apart from the 200 people in the office, and hopefully we're making a difference. But it's still good that we get to like play test games. We get to see the art that's coming out of the games. We get to see like game designers do their thing. Then we get to play the game at the end of it. And one of the other nice things about being in tools team is cause we don't have to, like, we hardly ever run the game itself, so like we don't actually see it very much. So I played control, and I basically had hardly any idea what was going to happen in it. So that was really nice, because then you get to play it as well, and then you get to see the creative stuff all happening, but you're still doing programming for stuff to try and help those people. But then yeah, if you worked in some other industry, you wouldn't have that. At least you'd be like, all right, I made this cool tool which helps people do something for banking or whatever. It's like, okay.
Does that ever bother either yourself or other programmers, the fact that no one sees what you made? I know for me as an artist, and you know, I might have artists completely disagree with me, but part of the satisfaction is showing the world what you made. There's a vain element to it that's like showing the world what you made and being like, you know, really proud, like put on a pedestal, like, hey, I made this. And it's very, like I said, it's probably born from like what's the word, like narcissistic tendencies. Does that ever like, do programmers go, fuck, we don't even get the credit, we like, you know, we made that possible? Like, does that ever, and I'm not saying like you guys get bitter or anything, but like, you know, I'm thinking like from my point of view, I'm like, I love showing people what I do, what I've made. I mean, people who know me from my art, I share it everywhere, every time I get the chance.
Yeah.
Do programmers, or especially tools programmers, because your stuff's really like, you know, hidden away a little bit, do you ever feel like that? Do you ever like play the game and be like, I did contribute to this, but no one.
Yeah, you can sort of get into that mindset, I suppose. But first and foremost, I think if you want to be in tools, you definitely just have to want to help people, just make their life better. Like, that's number one thing, really. And we've had to do it a few times in interviews to explain to people because a lot of people like apply obviously from outside the industry, so it kind of works both ways. Like a lot of people from other industries trying to get into games that can program want to come in via like tools, but then other times sometimes you get people that come into tools just to try and step into like graphics programming or systems or AI or whatever. But we do have to like explain to them, like, you know, we're making tools for a game, but like nobody outside of the company is really going to see what you do, because like why would they? Like there's no need. So there can be that kind of thing, but it is nice because it is like a a coin. It's double-sided, because like when things go wrong, you hear about it a lot because it is our fault, and it's like, okay, right. And if it's impacting on the productivity of people or something bad, like just however many people it affects, then you know about it, and then you feel a bit bad. You're like, okay, crap, we'll fix it. But then you do occasionally get compliments, and it's like, oh, this new thing is really good. It saves me this bother of what I've been doing for like the last year. Like this has made it so much better. And then we've started doing things now for at least to help advertise it sort of in the company, because it's probably the same in most games companies, where trying to tell people there's new stuff to try out is one of the most difficult things to get across, because people just don't want to read stuff, right? It's like you've got like messages, emails, you've got like as well like Confluence or whatever, like with your notes and stuff on it, and your release notes and stuff like that, but nobody has time to read those things because they're too busy trying to do their own thing. So we've started doing these like show and tell presentations like once every release now. We basically it's only like 20 minutes or something, but at least now a lot of the company come down and sit in the main room, and then we just try and show them what's coming up, at least, because it's a lot easier to get people to listen, obviously, if they're seeing it on their screen as well and you're like demoing it. So that's good. But then obviously after that you get feedback like, oh, this looks really good, or that's really good, and then that's kind of like the satisfaction we get, knowing that we've actually done something that's going to be useful for like a little while at least.
That's good. That's actually quite good to hear about the show and tell stuff, because I suppose that's quite handy. Like you said, it's hard to verbally say, hey, you've got like, I don't know, something to do with the shaders. Like, oh, this is really cool. Like, it's in an email that people just don't read that. But I suppose if you're in a show and tell and you have got their attention, you're like, hey, look visually, like, hey, this is really cool and useful to you. People are like, oh shit, that is actually interesting.
It's cool, like the graphics program and stuff for like videos and stuff as well. They can obviously send it around on Slack, and then everyone can do it. Another thing we've got is it's a first. I didn't have it in the last company, but this one we've got like a UX UI designer. He's kind of doing 3 things at once, but he's also kind of doing user research, which is like really, really handy for the tools teams, because he just directly goes in and basically just like interviews people almost for a team, and then he literally sometimes just like watches them what they do, and then if anything goes wrong, he's like, what's that about? And then it's a really handy way of us like finding out what's actually going on.
Oh, okay, so he's actually like, he's doing user research on your staff to like sort of go, just observing and going, oh, you had a problem there, what was that problem? Yeah, and he reports back to you guys like, hey, they had a problem with this thing, and it happened like 4 times while I was sat with them, so maybe it's worth looking at. The
really interesting thing is that people, like with their muscle memory, they get used to things, and it's like if something breaks one time and then it breaks a few times, and they tell like their nearby friends like what workaround there is to stop that problem, what can happen is you actually end up fixing the problem like about a month later, but then nobody realizes, and they're still doing this weird workaround thing. They learned like the year ago, and they told all their friends, so all 5 of them or whatever are doing this like workaround. And then they're so used to doing it that they don't really, because they're just so fast at doing what they're doing with the keyboard and mouse, whatever, that they don't really think about it. And then when you have a new person sitting there literally looking, going, or like recording the screen and stuff, like what was that about? Like, what did you click that? What was that error? What does that message mean? Like, why did you open that file over there, like, and do something weird with it? And then he started about the same time as me, pretty much, like a year and a half ago, and he's trying to do UX and UI, but he's also trying to do research to figure out what like the main areas need to be improved as well. But that's been really interesting to see, because we obviously get a direct line straight to what people are actually like experiencing and what their biggest.
Because that's actually really cool to hear, because there's so many little things I know just from using like Unreal, where I'm like, okay, just do this like annoying little thing, and it stops this bad thing from happening. And I suppose you just get so locked into doing that you never really think of it as a bug, because it's not that big an inconvenience. It's like 2 extra clicks, but it is technically a bug.
It's like, you shouldn't need to do that or whatever.
That's interesting. Did you, like you said before, like you had to start out like wanting to help people. When you got into programming, did you want to make tools? Like, was that even in your like mindset, or was it a case of, let's get a job in programming? Oh, it's tools. Oh, I actually really like this. Like, how did that look?
Yeah, because I went to uni and did like software engineering, and then I did like the computer games technology course at like Abertay, Dundee. And then that was all sorts. So it was like a year and a half or something course, and it was a bit of shaders, a bit of like AI, a bit of like console programming, a bit of whatever else. I think it was PS2 still back then, because yeah. But then at the time I don't really know, because I was like, I kind of like doing programming, and I knew I wanted to do something with programming. But the only ones I really knew about was I didn't really enjoy doing shader programming because it was too much like crazy wizard stuff that I had no idea what was going on.
Okay.
The console stuff sounded pretty good, like that, maybe that. And then like AI was sort of interesting as well, but then I was just like, tools programming was kind of a thing that wasn't so well known when I was at school. But then when I was at school, I got my careers advisor, I still remember telling me like, don't go to university and do the 4-year games course because that might not take off. Whereas if you do software engineering, you'll have like a good background for everything, a foundation or whatever.
Was that true? Do you think that was true, that advice?
Well, I don't think it was true, because games industry is obviously huge now. But I think it was good that I got like an all-around kind of computer science background rather than just dedicated to games. But I mean, there's people I've met that do programming that they've either done the dedicated like 4-year games programming course, or they've just self-taught themselves, and like it doesn't really matter what kind of. Some people are just like really good; they can teach themselves from all sorts of backgrounds, really. And some people are just really smart. But
you know what, you just brought. I just want to sidetrack that. I was having this conversation today in the Discord, and I just want to see what you think about this. As a whole, I feel like university is not a good track for artists, because there's not enough time to teach all the stuff you need. There's mentorships available. There's all these workshops available. So I'm like, you know what? As a whole, for game artists, university, you could probably get away with just being self-taught. Like, university is not a necessity. Do you think on a whole because I treat programming, and this might be right or wrong, as a far more academic subject. It's far more knowledge based and all this kind of stuff. Do you think it's fair to say that like university is quite a necessity for, if you want to get into programming, like the self-taught route isn't really a normal pathway? Like, what do you think of that?
I think, yeah, probably like, I was trying to think now, all the programming teams I've been on, there's like, I think everyone has probably been to university, the ones I met, like, that I directly worked with. Apart from the guy who was one that was the artist, then tech art, then programmer. I'm not sure, I think he did art when he was at uni. But he's good though. I think it probably is more common that people do go to university just for the computer science or whatever, if they're doing programming. But then some of these dedicated computer games courses for 4 years teach people quite a lot of good stuff about like making an actual game itself. So, but then that might maybe make things worse if you ever try to change the industries later on, if you know bad. But I think it is possible for people to like learn programming separately themselves. But I don't know, because I think a lot of games companies even just got into the habit of just demanding by default like you have to have a degree. Because even in QA, I think at Rockstar it was like, I'm sure the QA jobs even like they were like, you must have been at university, and it's like, what the hell, like.
Yeah, that's pretty much like a non-starter now in like game art. It's all judged on your portfolio. It's like, so this is what I was talking about earlier about, we have a really tangible thing. We can just show a portfolio, and like you don't have to look at this. Well, you do look at their CV for experience, but you don't like they live and die on their portfolio. Whereas like programming, I guess it's like, okay, they need to go to university because it's one of the really easy ways to validate whether or not they know, because it's a knowledge based thing. Like, do they know what they say they know? Well, they went to university and they got this grade, so they must know something.
Yeah, I'm not sure really, because I'm not sure how much in the tools teams they always look and make sure they have a degree, and then like don't give them an interview if they don't. But I think because again, you do a programming test usually, and then you have like a voice chat for like an hour or something, and then if that all goes well, then you come in for an actual interview and then do more questions, and then usually that covers a bunch of different things that computer science background might give you more of a chance with. But then there's nothing to say that a person who's sort of self-taught couldn't know those things, and they've probably experienced a bunch of them anyway when they've done their own projects. They would have hit the same things and then Googled it in, and like, I mean, Stack Overflow is, it's basically a joke, but it's pretty much how you program these days.
Dude, it's just, I think it's literally how everyone just be an adult now. It's like, how do I do tax? Google. How do I make this thing in art? Google. How do I like program this? Google. How do I run a company?
Yeah.
Google.
I mean, it's like with every day there's always like a Stack Overflow or something like, Google. But I'm not a very good programmer compared to some people I've worked with. They're just ridiculous. So
What is the skills you have as a tools programmer? What? Okay, actually, better question. What other types of programmers are there within your studio? Because in a moment I know like tools programmers, and there's like I know you got like graphics programmers.
yeah.
Like after that, I would just sort of have this default term of programmer. Like what other types of programmers are there within your studio in particular?
So I'll try and remember. I'll try and go around it in my head in the office. Yeah, so the tools team, the core team, they kind of like do the actual technology stuff that goes with like the actual consoles itself.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the graphics programmers that do all the shader stuff just to make things look cool and have the weird effects and stuff, whatnot. And then there is AI programmers for artificial intelligence that can be game specific, or it could be like a general kind of system that goes inside the engine. What else is there after that? There's like gameplay programmers, but they're usually more embedded in actual game teams itself. So they sit there next to level designers and artists and stuff, and then basically all work together.
Right.
They're programming like, because the designers do scripting of their own to help the game work, but there's also programmers that do specific things for like interactions and stuff like that they have to have gameplay programmers for.
Right.
And then there's also the audio programmers who do all the audio specific stuff as well. And I think, is there anyone else? I've probably forgotten someone that's going to shout at me when they
They got to listen first.
Because actually not here, but like at Rockstar there was obviously the networking team, so like there's programming team for that. And then there's actually there's animation programmers here as well. Animation programmers that do all sorts of stuff like with animation system.
Okay.
Some other ones. So basically, it's like it kind of mimics the art team and the team. Really, it's kind of like they do kind of mimic each other. Usually these days, I mean, it obviously wasn't that before. I don't think back in the day, but these days it's usually programmers pretty much in the same kind of roles as the other, like the content teams.
So it's interesting you say they mimic each other, because with like you couldn't have an environment artist easily go and just start doing character art, and you couldn't have like a materials artist just go over and start doing animation. But you do have overlap where like an environment artist can potentially move over to the materials team and like work in there for a bit and then come back to environment art. How like within the studio, how transferable are the programmers? Like could say, for example, a tools programmer go and work with a gameplay team, or like eventually transition into a gameplay team? Actually,
we've got an example. There's a guy, he was in tools, but then he's just, well, maybe last year I think it was, he's moved to the animation team now.
Nice.
He's an animation programmer. So like there is, because they obviously want to keep people in any game studio wants to keep the people. Mm-hmm. So then they do kind of promote like letting people move to try different like areas if they want to. But obviously, usually you have to still have a chat and maybe not so much do a test, but like then it's probably quite good to have your own hobby projects that you can show. But then you obviously know people quite well, so it's like they obviously know what you're like as a person and all that beforehand. And then usually it's just I don't know how hard it was to switch, but that guy went to the animation team from Tools.
It sounds like it does actually sound. It's kind of weird because it sounds like you guys actually, the programmers teams like mimic the art teams actually quite closely. It's like using the exact same example you just gave. Like you could have a character artist who like he's working on actually making the character models, and in his own time like he's really brushing up on his animation skills and like he's got some personal projects to show off. He's doing animation and being like, hey, you're looking for an animator right now, like do you mind if I like try my hand at it? And like, okay, I tell you what, work a little bit on a couple of the animation like small tasks. Oh, you're doing okay, well fine, you go full time. Like that happens a lot within art. So it's actually quite, I'll be honest, I thought you were going to say now once you're in your team you're very embedded and it's very difficult to move around. So that's actually quite interesting.
It also depends on like kind of the schedule of the company really, how many projects they've got going on. And so obviously you can do it like if it's towards the end of shipping a game, then you might have to wait a bit. But I think in general, especially at Remedy, they're really like open about letting people, if they want to try something different and they can keep you, then they would let you do it rather than just like push you away from the studio, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. The only one I imagine being quite difficult to transition into is graphics programmers, only because I've only spoken to 2 or 3, but yeah, they're on like a different level of like, they're thinking on a different level to me, and I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around what you're talking about right now.
It's pretty bonkers.
Yeah, I'm always just like, because it's weird because the graphics programmer is obviously like a graphics programmer and like an environment artist can like on a base level, have a conversation. You know, they could talk about a normal map. But then, like, they're talking about all the stuff they do with normal maps within the shaders, and I'm like, you lost me. Like, after normal map, I'm gone.
Yeah,
it's kind of bonkers. But dude, okay. So we're probably gonna wrap up. I always throw my guests under the bus with this last question. So you go back and talk to a young Adam, say post-grad Adam. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give yourself? What would you say to you when you were, like, say, 16?
I don't know, there'll be all sorts of stuff. there'll be like, the main one is usually just, I think people think that if they do go to university and then they want to get a job and then start as a junior somewhere or like a trainee or something, it would just be like, nobody expects you to know everything. Like, a lot of games industry stuff is learned on the job. Like, there's no maybe you've done programming or you did art or whatever university, and then you get a job and then everyone has that imposter syndrome and they're like, oh no, like, I'm not good enough, whatever. But like, literally nobody knows anything when they come out of university in some ways. Like, you know some stuff you've been taught, but like, going to a games company, nobody expects you to know everything or like will look at you differently, you know, like,
yeah, when
you start out. So it's, one thing would be like, don't worry about it. Like, if you get offered a job, then it's like, that's good enough. That's good enough indication. You go there and then you learn so much stuff in the first couple of years, and a lot of it is just like how a games company works itself, because university can't teach you that really, because you learn programming it there and then you get into a games industry company, and then it's like you realize working is just a completely different kettle of fish of what you thought it would be like, because a lot of it's to do with trying to communicate with people and just like help people, whatever, and do certain things. It's not just constantly programming all the time.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I tell you what, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's been really interesting to have a programmer on and hear your perspective and the way you think, and, you know, how the game industry looks through a programmer's eyes. It's been very insightful. I'm hoping, you know, with the whole aim of the podcast is so people can understand pathways into the industry, and hopefully someone listens who's looking to get into programming, and you've helped shine a light on it a little bit.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
But
I try not to speak too fast, but we'll see.
Dude, you've not heard me. I speak way too. You wouldn't think I host a podcast. Like, I speak too fast and I mumble and all that shit. It's terrible. But yeah, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking.
No worries.
And thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening, guys.